Oh, yes, episode 2 of the Journal of a CNY Entrepreneur with my good friend Neil Fennessey. During COVID, Neil and his 11-year-old daughter Hannah started an online blog called smartgirlstories.com. In that time, they've amassed over 20,000 subscribers and are telling the stories of women all over the world. I'm truly inspired by the mission of Neil and his daughter, who's now a 14-year-old budding entrepreneur and student, and this is truly an incredible story for any young entrepreneur out there. The second Neil reached out to me, I couldn't wait to get him on the podcast. We talked about parenthood, how to raise an entrepreneur child, Neil's original roots in business, and it was an incredible conversation. Here we go.
All my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice, hustle paid the price. Want a slice, got to roll the dice. That's why all my life, I've been grinding all my life. Look, all my life, been grinding all my life. Sacrifice.
When Hannah and I started doing this, we were just going out and getting various people up and running on the platform. And Hannah was just, she was overwhelmed with the first year in school and whatnot, and decided to take a bit of a back seat to it. And in the process, other people just kept coming back to us and saying, oh, that's a cool idea. I'd love to be involved. What can we do? Oh, can you write my story? Can I write a story? And I decided, let's start to hire additional journalists. Let's bring people on board. And that turned into a flood. We decided to put some calls out to see if people had stories, and we were getting 50 a week. So right now we're dealing with a massive deluge of stories. We've got 5 PR firms that are writing stories for us right now. We've got one has an organization down in South by Southwest. And we realized that it was difficult to get capacity in on the site. So we uploaded a cool feature for WP Forms, put an authentication element in there. And I'm going to test a little bit more today, but we should be able to start having 10, 15, 20 story submissions a day.
Wow.
If possible. We are finding out that everybody wants to be interested in this. We've got a person who's working with us in Kenya. We've got a person working in Nigeria, a woman in South Africa. We highlighted one of the largest women-owned businesses in South Africa and Southern Africa on the diamond industry. She loved it. She thought, this is awesome. This is so much fun. What else can I help you with? And we're sitting back, we're thinking, okay, so I guess we're opening an office in Johannesburg, South Africa. Kenya, our contact there has been reaching out, and every women empowerment program, what they often refer to as women, girls, safe spaces, has come back and said, yeah, can we put our information on the website as well? Absolutely. So there's a massive influx of stories, and we just had to get out of our own way, being the gap. Where a story would take about 2 hours to prepare on the site, now it's 5-10 minutes. We're getting stories that are just all over. We have one woman who is a survivor of an acid attack in India. We have a story of a woman who's a survivor of a gasoline explosion. And the first photos she's ever shared with anybody outside of her family are on Smart Girl Stories. We have people that are uploading TikToks into our back end, and we just haven't pushed it up onto our site because we just needed to get stable. I've got PR agencies that are asking how they can be involved, and they're saying, can I write my story? Or I'll spin it back to them and I'll say, yeah, you're promoting all of these amazing women. I said, when do we hear your story? And like one woman said the other day, she's like, no, I can't do that. I can't put my story up. I'm like, why not? You must have a story. And then you'll see their face just sort of drop, and they'll say, well, yeah, I do have a story, but I'm not ready for it. I'm like, all right, well, when you are, let us know. And for me, it's just a dad and a daughter doing this. Hannah's got stories. She's got a lot of stories, and grew up in a challenging situation, and she can't wait to tell her story. And our response is, when you're ready, let us know. Let us know.
Right.
We'll put it up there, and we'll do whatever we can to empower you to do it.
And she's 14 years old, correct?
Yeah, she turns 15 in 11 days. And she's a first year in high school. She's doing all things she possibly can to be happy, healthy, and successful in high school. She's very shy. She doesn't talk to her girlfriends about what she's doing. We had a meeting 2 weeks ago with a senior communications rep at a girls' school. I believe it's a girls' school in Albania. She's working with interns, interviewing interns at SU to help us with the site. She's lending creative ideas on a whole YouTube series we're going to do for the National Women's Hall of Fame, highlighting the 2023 and 2024 inductees. So it's fun for her to see how a business grows, what's involved. But it's also not too heavily impacting her days, getting her homework done and hanging out
as a
with her
child.
friends. And, right, exactly. Right. So for me, it's mentoring her as best as possible to say, these are the things that will come up. How do you manage them? How do you deal with time, time differences, conversations? It's fun because she gets a chance to chat with women all over the world. Just, for a few minutes to say hi, to hear to hear how they do what they
Right.
do. And, if we can get things to the next level this summer, some kids are going on summer vacations to Disney World. Maybe Hannah and I are heading to Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya, to do a women's symposium, or to South Africa, or down to Chile to do a women's symposium. It's a little different than, beach time.
So what exactly is Smart Girl Stories? Is it just, women sharing their stories, whatever that may be, bad, good, indifferent? Is it, a certain niche? I'm just kind of, curious what exactly, if I go on Smart Girl Stories, what can I expect?
You're going to see, initially, it was stories of women that were of interest to my daughter, and she would do the research on them, books that she had read. She's an avid reader. And when we got to the end of 2023, I thought, all right, we need to make this go a little bit viral. So going in the idea of creating Smart Girl Stories by saying, do you have a story to tell? And everybody says yes. So what you're getting right now is our first tiptoe into the ocean of stories that are out there. And when you think about it, there are billions of stories being written every single day. So you will find interesting stories that we found of interest to us. And we're working with journalists. So we're going to change the name a bit. We're working with writers who are writing stories on our behalf, and they're all coming back and saying, this is a story that's interesting to me. Right. And they're pitching the story to us, and, we agree, and they write it, and we put it up on the site. We're changing that now to the idea of advocacy. So we are now not working with journalists, we're working with advocates. So these are people who are saying, this is a story that needs to be told. It's my story. It's my neighbor's story. It's my sister's story. It's my mom's story. It's my coworker's story. It's the women with whom I work. It's their story. That's what you're going to read. And there are some areas that we want to grow into. We thought in the next few months, but something tells me it's going to be in May. But there are some areas that we want to turn the Smart Girl Stories into a bit of an online therapy system to allow people to share stories. And the subject matter is, Smart Girl Stories, but the writers should be anybody who has a smart girl that they want to share. I have a friend of mine who wants to write an obituary about, his aunt. And his aunt is extraordinarily well known, and she died a few months ago, and she's a very influential voice in the politics of today. He wants to write her obituary. I'm like, you got to write. He's like, I know. I just got to sit down and do it. So if there is a story that needs to be shared, we want to share it. And whether that's in the local market, Syracuse, if it's the United States, if it's Nigeria, if it's in, Kosovo or wherever, send it on over, and let's see if we can't get it up and running.
And how many, subscribers did you say you had? I think, did you say you were at like 20,000 or something crazy?
Yeah. So at the end of last year, we connected Google Analytics around June or July of 2023. You should always be monitoring your analytics. And we got to the end, and I'm like, I wonder how many people we have. And we hit 20,000. So we hit 20,000 views all across the globe. And we didn't do much in the way of promotion. It was really just our internal story creation. So we've been doing a few posts and testing what works for us on LinkedIn, and we're getting 400 or 500 hits a day.
Wow.
Which is, pretty wild when you think about it, because it was just Hannah and I. Here's Hannah, 11 years old, 12 years old, 13 years old. And they're like, let's write this story. I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. Look what she did. Oh, that's cool. I never knew she invented that. And now it's grown into all of these amazing avenues. And our goal is to just keep growing that and internationalize the site and content. Do more regional, so that, when you go to the site, you can see Smart Girl Stories of women in central New York. It would be wonderful. But then you can branch out. You can expand your lens if you want to.
Right. And when we first connected, I wanted to talk to you immediately because, a 10 or 11-year-old girl building a business like this is so impressive. And there's so many kids who are entrepreneurs that need someone to look up to like that. and back to our previous conversation, I know we spoke about, the importance of seeing kids like that, other kid entrepreneurs. Where do you think a 10 or 11-year-old building a business like this is very unique, and that. Where do you think this comes from, and, in her, and I'm just so fascinated by it.
Circumstance. For her, it was circumstance. Her big challenge was all things COVID. She didn't know what to do. And I said, code. Why don't you learn how to code? Because I have a coding background, development background. And it's, I thought, hey, you could be coding. You could learn how to do, learn Python. And she's like, no, I hate coding. I hate computers. And you're just like, all right. What else do you like to do? Well, you like to read books. Wonderful. So, in the business world, you try to do something very focused on something that's passionate to you. Hannah loves to read. Hannah loves to write. So what's the career path there? She's an author. Okay. She could be an author. She could write books. She's dying to write her own book. It'll be an autobiography, and I'm sure it'll hit the world, and with a loud clap of thunder and lightning, based on her past. But what else could she do? Could she help others to write? And whole thing just morphed into this whole new world. And for her, and for all kids, they go through a maturation of, what's viral, what's business, how do you sell, how do you make money, what is the money, where does the money come from? Dad goes to work every day, mom goes to work every day. What do they do? Where's the money? Where's that money? How did we get food in the fridge? So now she's getting an understanding that there's a business model here. We're not a non-for-profit. We're a for-profit. So we are going into a media space. We would be similar to a newspaper. Where does the money come from in that space? What's the effort associated with it? How do you distribute? How do you manage? How do you go from doing something by yourself to how do you bring on board people? We're not hiring. We don't have any employees. Everything is freelance and working through an expanded network like that. But all of that has time. All of that has money. All of that has some association of level of effort. So for her, she's getting a chance to see that firsthand, and the challenges and opportunities that arise from it.
Right. And I think one of the biggest challenges as a 14-year-old scaling a business of this nature is balancing that. Yeah. Right. Is balancing that professional and personal life of, okay, I'm scaling a business, but also I'm 14. I have friends. I play video games. I play sports, whatever it may be. How do you think she's balanced that? Any advice you can give to anyone else this young, scaling a business on just how to navigate it all?
For her, it's similar to anybody, right? It's the age is just a lack of experience and awareness. I know a lot of things about business, and I know that I don't do them all well. So we were talking about doing things on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and whatnot. She's like, I don't know how to do all that stuff. I said, great. Find someone. You can learn how to do everything yourself, and that's wonderful. But you could also bring someone on board who knows how to do that. And instead, you're managing them as opposed to managing the work itself. Mm-hmm. So you become the general manager or the coordinator, the champion. And as a result, we brought on someone who does all the social media. So and this is the illusion, I think, of so many people that are in business when they go out there on Instagram. The reality TV shows, the TV shows that we see when we watch people being interviewed. There's a whole staff that makes things happen. And the staff is motivated, one, by money, and two, by supporting the vision. Everybody sees Hannah and says, wow, that's an amazing vision. How can I be involved? And we have a friend of ours who is in Washington, D.C. and New York City, owns a very large PR firm. And she just gets Hannah on the phone and speaks to her like an adult. And Hannah's able to ask questions and learn. So if there is a kid out there who wants to do something like this, then you start the business, you learn everything there is to know. And if the business has some viability to it, then you align yourself with people who see your vision and can find some sort of financial remuneration to joining the vision. You think about a small kid business. What is a small kid business? So it's I used to cut grass, the neighbor's grass. That was easy to do because I used my dad's lawnmower. But I
Mhm.
knew kids who did that for a living, and they used enough, or they cut enough grass in a cash basis that they bought a lawnmower. And then they pushed that lawnmower around. They didn't have a truck. They just went from neighbor's yard to neighbor's yard to neighbor's yard, and eventually got enough cash that they bought a bigger lawnmower. And then they hired their buddy, and their buddy came on board. Um, their buddy came on board and did the work. So you're not alone. You don't have to do things alone. There are people who want to help.
That's great.
And my background is technology. This really, for me, was just, I do all things Microsoft. And I thought, well, I need to get into the world of open source. So I thought, all right, great. I'm learning all this stuff in open source and SEO. And now it's later.com. And now it's AI. Okay, now we're doing videos on the fly. Now we're working with internationalization, but in a new tech stack. So for me, I was really a resume builder. That was it. I was just, I'll add some stuff to my resume and learn new skills. And now look what's happened.
And conversely, that's a really good segue to my next question, because, obviously there's the point of view of the child building a business, but as a parent, seeing your daughter accomplish these big things, but going into the entrepreneurial world is scary. It's the real world. People are attacking you now, looking to beat you in business. You know what I mean? So as far as a parent, how do you kind of balance that, and advice you'd give to a parent whose child is kicking ass like this, for lack of a better term?
There's I do a lot of work with venture capital. I do a lot of work with startups. I do a lot of work with people who've always thought they wanted to be in a business and not. And I've certainly seen my fair share of successes and failures. I've seen a lot of failures from my side of the fence. I've had some random stuff happen over the years. I mean, I literally lost a business because a governor no longer was governor. And there's a new governor in office and didn't support the business model. You're like, okay. So how do you teach that to a child? You teach that through experience. Hannah hasn't seen any challenges yet beyond throughput. What I'm thinking, and what I'm thinking is probably going to happen this summer, just the natural level of her own story and how it's going chapter by chapter, is she's going to become more involved in understanding how things happen with coordination. We haven't had any failures. We haven't had any real challenges, but I think it's going to come down to her just realizing that if she doesn't understand how to meet the challenge, she'll know someone who does. There is a bit of, I don't think nepotism is the right word, but it might be, right? I mean, I have an established background in technology, so she may know all things about that. Let me rephrase that. She's going to have opportunities available to her that other kids may not.
Yep.
To some extent, that's what Smart Girl Stories is going to help, though. There may be a smart girl somewhere in the neighborhood who just was featured on Smart Girl Stories, and someone will say, hey, I read your article on Smart Girl Stories. Can I contact you? Okay, sure.
So obviously one of the reason why I started this podcast was there's specific challenges to Central New York and scaling a business in Syracuse. Curious on your perspective on that, and what Hannah said to you about challenges specific to the area. So just curious on your perspective.
So moving out here in 2011, and I'll be delicate about this. I took a 90% pay cut. Lost everything, lost my home, lost my network. And I have in 13 years never been locally employed. Moving out here, making almost $300,000 a year, managing a multi-million-dollar consulting firm to come to upstate New York, and people don't understand my background, don't understand technology architecture, don't understand professional services consulting. And coming to an area that was much smaller. Opportunities are really struggling here. That's changed. But I came out here and I built a program for the White House indirectly, and I reached out to local universities, and local universities said, "Yeah, we don't do that." I said, "Wait a minute, are you kidding me? You don't want to help build a project for the White House? Really?" No, we don't. What about internships? Do you have internships? Kind of, but not really. So I went back to Boston and found people. So I remember meeting with a museum out here and saying, listen, I've got contacts at the Smithsonian. Do you have any interest? Get you going to Smithsonian. And the museum's like, no, we don't really do that. And I said, are you serious? Now, again, that was 13 years ago. Right. So my challenge in coming out here was that this market didn't necessarily understand the opportunities that presented themselves. Now, fast forward post-COVID, there are thousands of people like me who came from larger metropolitan areas. So the market's changed. And I went back to that museum and I told them the story. They're like, yeah, that person's not here anymore. What do you need? What can we do? How can we help? Yeah, here we go. You can volunteer here. And I'm like, there's a world of change. You've got a different industry coming out here. Before it was very agricultural. And there's not a lot of traditional entrepreneurialism in agriculture. Agricultural entrepreneurialism is, I want to farm.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different world. Nowadays, that's a very difficult market to get into. But now you come out here and you say, well, I want to be in social media, or I want to create something. I want to build a drone. I want to do something in healthcare. This area needs greater investment in building a better infrastructure. And there are two ways to do that. One, there are already established companies here investing. Two, there are companies that come to this area. And that's what we're seeing more of now. Lotte's investment, Micron's investment, they're coming to the area and they're saying, hey, we're going to bring, billions of dollars to local markets. Like, okay, cool. I would say now it is much more conducive for the startup. At the end of the day, though, when I was working with venture capital firms, people and some of the other startups are like, it's a great idea. You got to move back to Boston. I'm like, I can't. I have my daughter. I have custody of my daughter. I can't move. All right. Well, good luck. It sounds like such a great idea. Nowadays, people are like, oh, well, we live in a virtual world. We don't care where you are. Yeah. What do you need to do? Everything's changed. Yay, COVID. So I would say that this market up here in central New York has changed so dramatically that if you were a startup, if you were someone who wanted to balance family, if you wanted to leverage Syracuse University, because now they're ready for it, or Lemoyne, or Cornell, and especially SUNY Oswego. SUNY Oswego has an amazing internship program. You tap into that market and you tell them, I'm moving my business out here. I think you're going to see a lot more folks wanting to move to this area, away from the Boston, away from the New York City, because cost of living's less, quality of life is better. There's no traffic. I mean, I had to go into downtown Syracuse earlier today. It was like 15 minutes. Tried to do that in Boston. I have much more prolific use of the F word. Here it's like, just going through, this is a lovely little neighborhood. Where's this? Oh, this is Camillus. Those are cute houses.
Right.
That doesn't happen in the major metro areas. So somehow, some way, entrepreneurs need to say, I know what I want to do. I can do this business remotely. Where should we go? Let's go look at Skinny Atlas. Let's go look at Camillus. Let's go look at Fayetteville Manlius. Let's go look at Ithaca, right? Let's go look at Way Up. What are some of the benefits that are north of the city? Rural America. This is wonderful. I'm going to go buy 50 acres and live in a massive farm and grow a global conglomerate. Yes, you can do that. It's so different now. If I came out here today versus 13 years ago, my life would be dramatically different.
Gotcha. What do you think? So in the decade that you've been in Syracuse, what do you think is your favorite part of this area?
My house where I live, I look out. Oh, it's snowing. That's not a favorite part of this area.
Cut that.
Not that. Before I moved out here, I had a job opportunity to move to London to manage a race car company. And I moved out here instead. And I would say favorite things about this area now are that it is so bucolic. There's a lot of opportunity. That airport, there's never any traffic at the airport. Hannah and I travel a fair bit. You just pull into the airport and that's it. There's a parking spot. Yeah. People are like, oh, there's no parking. There's no parking. You pull in, there's like, do you see the second lot?
And pull into the parking spot. You can pull right up to the front, kick them out, and drive away. No traffic.
It's easy. I mean, the airport should be sold more than it is. Hannah and I and her girlfriend, we went to Spain in spring break last year, and we had to get up the crack of dawn. We flew down to New York City. We crashed at the TWA airport and then flew off to Spain, and we saved like ridiculous money doing that. There was no issues with traffic. We came home exhausted, got off the plane, walked to the car, drove home. Done. That's not Logan. That's not Newark. That's not JFK. That's amazing. That's exactly what you want. So without a doubt, that'd be the second thing. The first thing is a lovely bucolic area. It's wonderful around here. The second part, of course, is the fact that it's easy to get out and come back, right? You can turn off the city living. Mm-hmm. I'd say the third thing is you're pretty centrally located. We're an hour from Rochester. That's a great place to play. You're an hour from Ithaca. That's a great place to play. You're 4 change from the Jersey Shore. Not that bad of a ride, right? And you're 4 or 5 hours from Boston if you want to. And again, cost of living. I mean, the house I live in right now, I know for a fact in Boston would be at least $1 million in change. Prices have increased out here, but it's nothing compared to what it is elsewhere. The other thing is, we're in Skaneateles, so we have a fantastic school district. We're in New York State, so we have a fantastic school district. You're almost guaranteed to have fantastic schools.
Mm-hmm.
So there are so many benefits. Traffic consists of ducks crossing the road. Oh, there's a goose. Slow down.
Right.
It's not, there's no serious traffic. Knock on fake wood desk. Crime is not that much of it. So there are so many reasons why. And I hope over the next 10, 15, 20 years for Hannah's sake is that there's even more financial investment in the area and more opportunity. Our challenge is everything is done by car. That's always going to be, we're attached to the car as opposed to, when Hannah and I go to France or, Italy and stuff, you're walking around.
Right.
But I would say those are the benefits. And there just needs to be more. There needs to be more benefits. But Boston, I miss hospitals. I miss the healthcare aspect of it. So I see that improving over time here as well. It'd be fascinating if I moved out here right now.
Back to business a little bit, are there any sectors CNY specific that, as someone who's very experienced in the business world that you think would take off, or you would recommend, if kids are interested in starting a business, that you would recommend them starting that in?
Kids look at technology differently. So the 2 key pieces I would say, stuff that I'm seeing, one is AI, all things AI. Embrace AI. The other thing would be anything relative to drones. So in the world of AI, and this is kind of going off on the side, we have a very large agricultural community that is pinching pennies. In many respects, they're pinching pennies. AI is the savior for all things ag. With spot treatment of chemicals on crops, with management of animals, with regenerative farming. Now, how are you going to get a kid to get into regenerative farming? It's not going to be easy, but AI to my neighbor's farm. I have a neighbor down there that has 1,000 head of cattle. We have friends who have almost 3,000 head of cattle, and they have 30 plus employees, 40 plus employees. What could AI do? Could AI make life a little easier for them? Maybe. Absolutely. Could drones make life a little easier for them? Absolutely. Can kids build drones? Yes. The stuff that's on the internet right now that you can buy? Yes. I remember seeing about 10 years ago a robot, and all it did was just move potted plants. Picked it up and moved the potted plant, right? Just moved it, gave space. And that removed someone's job. So you got a catch-22 there. You've got kids today who could be building drones who have built something that can go and get the mail from the mailbox. All right. Is that useful? Maybe, maybe not. You got drones that could do a delivery to go to Kinney's down the street. Programs in Kinney's, person takes the drone, puts the drugs, pharmaceutical items in it. Off it goes to the person, comes back again. They have drones right now in Cameroon, I believe, where it's doing blood samples. You fly the drone, just goes across the country, and it comes back. And they're doing ridiculous business for this blood testing facility. So we want to do this drone highway here, get kids to do drones. And that's not a college degree. That's the other thing. There's no need for a college degree. The other side out of all of this is we talk about entrepreneurialism in business. We need truck drivers. We need farmers.
Yep. We
need people building bridges. We need people installing electrical. And what's great about kids is crawl spaces. No, I'm just kidding. Because I've been in a crawl space. No, that's child slavery. No. Cut that. But I know, Hannah and I worked on the house here, and she did the banding around the house with the power hammer. That's got to be entrepreneurial, right? You got a couple of kids who have been helping all of the neighbors do yard work. All right, well, now they're going to be painting houses. Now they're going to be cleaning gutters. Now they're going to be installing gutters. And they're no longer 14, 15, and 16. Although you got to be careful with blade and that kind of stuff from a safety standpoint. But now they're 18, 19, 20, 21. What else are they doing? They're at the house. They're at Mrs. Simpson's house. Hey, Mrs. Simpson, we noticed that your lights are out. Can we replace those? Great. So that's house maintenance. Let's put new lights up. Where now you get into electrical. We need to shift away from the idea of all AI, the idea of all drones, and focus 100% on anything that kids can do today. A lot of kids don't want to go to college. There's no reason to go to college. HVAC. I try to talk to Hannah all the time. Honey, why don't you go into HVAC? They make like $250 an hour. No. HVAC. Are you sure? You sure? HVAC's where it's at. Solar. So from an entrepreneurial standpoint is we need to break the traditional model that you go to college, get your 4-year degree, and then you get your certifications. No.
Can't learn how to be an entrepreneur in college.
It's there's an old saying that I say to Hannah, a master's degree makes a great employee.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to piss off 95%
my master's degree in a month, so that hits home right about now.
It's it's going to piss off everybody. But the reality is you haven't lived until you've had to make a decision between two expenses, and you can only choose one. And entrepreneurs deal with that. I'm working with an amazing person right now who's building out a software. I can't talk about it because of NDA, but we had this long conversation about the difference between us and the people that they're working with. And I said, remember, the people that you're working with are employees elsewhere. And that's great because you need that. They bring skills that you don't have. You're a cow person, right? You're on the back of the horse going, yeah, everybody, let's go. And an employee says, that's not such a good idea, right? They balance it out. An entrepreneur is someone who's willing to say, all right, I'll give it a whirl. Sure. What do I get? Bankruptcy. Okay, let's avoid that. How do I avoid that? Well, then you bring on board people to support you. So entrepreneurial is someone who wants to do it on their own, to try, to give it a whirl. And that is a plumber. I am going to focus on just doing ADA plumbing. I am going to install toilets for senior citizens. I'm going to install handrails. I'm going to walk into all of the homes in central New York, and I'm going to say, this doorwell is not wide enough for a wheelchair, Mrs. Jones. I can help you with that. And then they go have a friend of theirs who does law and grant management and what have you, and say, we can give you $3,000 to widen all the doors in your house. That's all that kid does.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Has 3 selections of toilets. I have this white one and white one. This one is brown and this one's green. Which toilet would you like? Great, Mrs. Jones. We're going to start. And that's what they do. They specialize just in bathroom remodeling, specifically for ADA compliance. And the kid's 18, 19, 20. Done.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I feel like when we talk about entrepreneurism, we focus on the sexy sectors, like what you first brought up. Drones, AI, those are sexy, right? But there's such a market for the blue collar business owner of the plumber, the contracting company specializing in those types of things where you don't need to go to college and you can legitimately make 150, 200, 300 grand a year, $1 million a year, or you can make 50 grand a year. But you know what? If your kid has a recital at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, you can go if you want to. And making 50 grand a year in Syracuse is awesome. And you can do whatever you want when you feel like it. And I think there's a really big market for kids that are interested in those type of things, especially with when you consider the number of, what is it? It's like 10 or 20 to 1 retiring, getting replaced. Yeah. The next 10 or 20 years is going to be a huge market shift for young people owning blue collar businesses. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and it's a perfect opportunity for any organization that wants to train. So the unions, perfect opportunity for the unions. And the BOCES program is pretty good as well. They do a really good job actually down here over in Auburn. So you've got kids who just don't like computers. Fine, what do you like doing? Well, there's a huge opportunity for you there. And it's paramount that we do that. Then you get into the drones, into the blue collar space, and you're thinking, that's an interesting way in which to do it. So we go back to the idea of running wires. That's a little drone. Go run the wires over there. Why are you shuffling around underneath in the crawl space? I mean, on your knee pads, you're on one corner of the crawl space. I'm on the other corner of the crawl space, and there goes the drone. And that's a really smart electrician who is sitting there next to a really smart drone operator and says, I've got to snake these wires. What do you suggest? And the drone person says, I don't know anything about electrical, but a snake could do that. Great. Can you build me a snake drone? I could build you a snake drone. Now you got a snake drone. So you got the AI kid, you got the drone kid, and you got the electrician kid. And the three of them have revolutionized the electrical business.
For
So
some reason, that reminded me of that Steve Jobs quote, and I'm paraphrasing here. It's hire lazy people and don't get in their way, because they'll come up with the best creative shortcuts to figure out everything, right? And not that that's a lazy example. It just popped that in my head where, as an electrician or just a drone guy, maybe you wouldn't think of that, but just freely thinking together, you could come up with much more
things.
Right.
The other thing is that being in a heavy ag space, there are few people that can figure stuff out like a farmer. And there are a few people who are more helpful to one another than a farmer.
Mm-hmm.
You've got one farmer who has the front end loader, you got the other farmer who has the backhoe, and they're best friends. So you've got, if we can teach kids that entrepreneurialism is not only doing something, but asking people who can do things. Like, how smart of you. How did you know to do that? I didn't. I asked someone to help me. I'm friends with, my buddy's got the landscape business. So I do electrical. So he calls me up, or she calls me up, and I'm out there wiring all the lights and everything's, up and running. And then whenever I go to a house and I look at someone's electrical, I'll say, you can put lights in. That's entrepreneurial. Why do you have to learn it yourself? Entrepreneur thinks outside the box and asks why or what about. What about's a great question. What about?
Yeah. When you think of it that way, entrepreneurialism can feel by nature very individualistic and you're left on an island. But really, when you think of it that way, it's the ultimate team game. You're really just trying to piece together the right team to maximize your results, really.
An island is land surrounded by water, and it's only a problem if you don't have a boat, if you can't swim, the water's too deep, and you don't have a plane. So an entrepreneur says, I got to this island by this boat. I should get more boats. I should get a bigger boat. I should get people who have boats. There's an old saying that I tell to Hannah: don't buy what you can lease, don't lease what you can rent, don't rent what you can borrow, don't borrow what you can steal. The entrepreneur is always, can I borrow that? Hey, what are you doing with that? You think about some of these farmers, that people who get into the farming space, you watch the YouTube channels, they're going to their neighbor and they're saying, can I lease the land for, 6 months for, I don't know, $100 an acre? The person's like, yeah, sure. What do you want to do with it? I want to graze my sheep on it. All right. We have people now who are doing solar farms, and we've got people who have sheep, and they're like, hey, can I bring my sheep to your solar farm? And the solar farms are thinking, yes, you can. How much is it? It's $500. Oh, that's a little steep. Sure, yeah. Meanwhile, they're paying $500 a day for a landscape crew out there. That's entrepreneurial. It's thinking outside of the box. Not everybody can. And some people don't do it well. Or some people do it well, but they're not, always, there's someone else doing it better. And yeah.
I think we've went off on a really fun tangent here, but I'd like to reel it back to Smart Girl Stories.
Yeah, of course.
But I've really appreciated this tangent. But I know you said the biggest thing for Hannah was, kind of what she went through and her lived experiences. And I'm kind of curious if there's, one specific thing you can pinpoint that, really arose this idea or where this came from. Just kind of curious,
Without going into too much detail, something that we're realizing is you've got post-COVID, you've got high school, you've got girl, you've got this market today, you've got the economy, you've got politics as they are today. As a parent of a girl, as a dad of a girl, you say you want all of the same opportunities for her that anybody else can have. And her challenges have been that those have been, in some respects, severely limited or interrupted Whereas other opportunities have, I mean, I've done my best to give Hannah opportunities that she wouldn't have had ordinarily. But there are some things that she's experienced which have been pretty challenging. And she looks at storytelling as an outlet, as a way away from Instagram, as a way away from the cell phone, putting the thing down. And you are, what is it? Steel is born out of fire and force. That's Hannah. So here is a child who has had far more crap happen to her than she should have. She has witnessed, she has experienced. We both consider ourselves to be survivors. And Smart Girl Stories resonates with her. When I speak with people about Smart Girl Stories, they are survivors as well of their challenges, some of which were accidents, some of which were malicious acts. And I look like, I see Hannah as at a gate, and the gate is closed, and one day that gate's going to open. And how she exits the gate is going to be different every day older she gets. And I will be excited to see when she does have that gate open, to see where she takes it and how she begins the next set of chapters for her story. So that's what Smart Girl Stories is. Someone said, the other day about smart, like, oh, you want, doctors and, engineers and stuff. And I said, no, you learn through failure. You learn through making mistakes. And that's what makes you smart. When you're a young kid, don't touch something that's hot. It burns. If you push the glass, it breaks. You might get in trouble. You're not going to do that anymore. That's smart. There are times when we do, Hannah will be around horses, and she knows how to be around horses because she's smart now. She was stepped on. She has fallen off the horse a few dozen times, and she's doing well. She's smarter now. We say that. Oh, you're smarter now. Boy, you learned your lesson. Boy, I learned my lesson. I'm a lot smarter now. Some people have become smart in areas that they just shouldn't be. And that's because of terrible situations, terribly unfortunate situations. And Hannah's smart in a lot of areas that she never should have had to be. Same with me. So, that's why we take the idea of Smart Girl Stories and entrepreneurship and everything else, and we move it away from what we perceive, what the market tells us is smart, and instead bring it back to the brass tacks of smart is learned experience in a particular area, and you have accomplished something. And if you're really smart, you're going to share it with others so that others can be smart. And that's what Smart Girl Stories is all about.
Awesome. So it's not so much the literal new play on smart, but like you said, just to the grassroots of if you learn something, you're smarter.
That's exactly right. And that opens us up to anyone who has learned anything over time.
One thing that I'm always thinking about, I swear it's the first thing I think about when I wake up, and the last thing I think about before I go to bed is just my legacy and kind of what I'm leaving behind, especially as a father. And I'm sure you kind of think about the same as well. So curious as far, how often you think of legacy, what it means to you, and what kind of legacy you're hoping to leave behind.
Well, I think for Hannah, I will know I have been successful when I see her happy and on her own, and at a point in life where she is 100% independent. And, when it comes to legacy, so what's my legacy? Do I, is there a building named after me? Is there a child named after me? No. Hannah is smart because of her experiences and the independence that she's created. She's always been very independent. I've always tried to encourage strength in her, and she has now taken it on herself. So my legacy is that she has learned the tools, added the tools to her toolkit to be on her own and to help others who may not be as fortunate as her, or may be available for greater opportunities. That's the legacy. I think to put our name on something, or to say that remember Neil, that's not really, that's kind of selfish. It's just, my dad taught me this. Great success.
I see it very similarly. One thing I always remind myself and a lot of other parents is you're preparing them to be an adult, not necessarily your child, and they're going to be an adult for a lot longer than they're going to live in your house. And you need to remind yourself that you're preparing them for that, not necessarily 5 to 18, but 18 to hopefully 1,000, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you got to kind of just remind yourself that it's just you're raising an adult.
Yeah. Throughout from the very young days, something that I did with Hannah very early on was to get her confident and comfortable to speak to doctors. At a very early age, 5, 6, 7, 8, you tell the doctor, you tell the doctor, you tell the doctor, or whomever the treatment professional is. And I did that because I wanted her to always be comfortable in speaking about the challenges she's facing in the body. Oftentimes you're like, well, they're 18. That's when they start going to the doctor about themselves. I'm like, no, I was just sitting next to Hannah, helping out with extra words.
You were just arrived.
I had to be. And there's a lot of reasons for that as well. But you're right. So what is your legacy? Your legacy is the underpinnings and the foundation from which your children do what they do.
Awesome. Love that. Closing, last question. What is one thing you want everyone to take from this podcast and from you and Hannah specifically?
That it's going to be okay. A little indication into the survivor mentality that it's going to be okay. That worry is worse than reality. That you can persevere. That you should stay true to yourself. That whatever you have had done to you, you should not do it to others. You should be the better person, the bigger person. And if you can help people be better in their lives, to tell their stories, then you're doing a good job at it.
I appreciate that. This has been awesome. I've really appreciated my time.
I'm grateful for your time, Tyler. This was fun.
Where can everyone find you?
So smartgirlstories.com is the easiest place to find the site. And if they want to do some more research, they can find me through LinkedIn.
smartgirlstories.com and Neil Fennessey.
Thanks, Tyler. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you.
That was fun.